So do you pay to have somebody to change the oil in your ski, or do you do it yourself? It's not hard to do it yourself. Let me show you how. First, let's talk about the things that you'll need to do this job. The first thing is obviously the oil. Make sure to check the owner's manual so you know what viscosity oil that you need for your PWC. Sticking with the manufacturer's oil is always a good idea, but you don't necessarily have to. Just make sure that you get a high quality oil. Personally, I would go with nothing less than a really high quality synthetic oil to put in my PWC. The next thing, of course, is the oil filter. Again, sticking with the manufacturer's filter, you can't go wrong. But if you don't do that, make sure you get a good quality oil filter. Of course, you're going to need an oil filter wrench in order to get the old oil filter off. The next thing you'll need is an oil extractor. The one that you see here that I'm using in my video, I'll put a link to down in the description. If you want to get one of those. This is what you're going to use to get the oil out of your ski. Of course, you're going to need a funnel in order to get the new oil in the ski without making too much of a mess. And I always make sure that I have a few rags on hand, just in case I do spill a little bit of oil, I can easily clean it up. And that should be about it. So let's get started. Well, of course, the first thing we want to do is we need to take the seats off. So we got to get to the engine, right? Let's do that. Now, if you watched my last video where I showed you how to change the oil in your boat, we're going to use the same oil extractor for removing the oil from the jet ski. Now, just like before, we need to warm that oil up a little bit to make it a little thinner so it'll actually pump out just a little bit better. So we're going to start the ski up to do that and run it for a few minutes. Now, of course, you probably know you don't want to run your ski for very long without having a water source. So we're going to hook up a water source so we can actually run the engine. Okay, so the newer Yamahas, they give you a nozzle right here that you can actually use that connects to the flush port here in the back. So what you want to do is you want to screw that onto your hose. Goes in the flush port, little twist. There you go. Now it's important to remember that you do not want to turn the water on until the ski is running. If you turn the water on and the ski is not running, you can end up with water inside your engine, and we don't want that. So let's go ahead and start the ski. Right here is the cooling water coming from the engine. So obviously if you don't see this water flowing, your engine's not getting water yet. It may take a couple of seconds before you actually see it, but if you've been running for a long time and you don't see water here, we have a problem. You want to shut the engine back down and find out what's going on. But eventually this water is going to get warm, and once it's warm, then you know the engine is actually up to operating temperature. I'm going to rev it just a little bit so it'll get some heat in there. we turn the water off first, and then we cut the engine off. All right, now let's get that pump and let's pump the water out. Let's get that pump and let's pump the oil out. Okay, so I've gotten my oil extractor out, and by the way, I will put a link down in the description as to where you can get one of these if you don't have one. But I've hooked the tubes up. Oil extractors come with different size tubing and different size connectors, so you can fit or find the best size that's actually going to fit the dipstick, so you can get it down into the dipstick. The whole idea is you want to put this tube into the dipstick and keep pushing it down until it touches bottom. Once you feel it touch bottom, you don't push anymore. If you continue pushing, that might cause the tube to curl up, and now you're actually coming back up and you may not get all the oil out. So once it hits bottom, you hook it up, and you hook it up to your oil extractor. Now this particular type is the one that you pump. You basically pump it, it creates a vacuum, and it eventually just pulls all the oil out. They do have electric ones as well, so if you prefer to get an electric one, then you can do that. But we're going to go ahead and do some pumping. So we're going to hold it with our foot. Okay, so you can actually see that oil coming up through the tube there and going down into the reservoir. So, and this oil is not extremely dirty because this is actually the first oil change. It's at the 10-hour service is basically what I'm doing. But you can actually see there is oil coming through there. You'll know that you're pretty much done when you start seeing air bubbles. You start seeing air bubbles and you hear it sucking air, you know you've gotten all that oil out. So you just kind of let it pump, let it do its thing, and eventually when the air bubbles and the air starts coming through, we know we've gotten all the oil and we're good to go. So let's just let us do its job, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay. Now I don't know if y'all can hear this, but you can definitely hear air coming through the tube, and of course you can see the tube is no longer full of oil. So that means we have sucked all that oil out of there, and that is exactly what we're looking for. So oil extraction done. Woo-hoo. All right. Now all we have to do is change the filter and then put more oil in there. And it looks like we got just about 4 quarts out of there. I've been told that you'll never get absolutely all of it out, but I do think we got a good chunk of it, so we're in good shape. Now, onto the filter. So now if you look down there, you'll see that there's the oil filter. Obviously, as you can expect, we're gonna probably lose a little oil out of there when we get it loose, so I put a rag down there because I'm trying not to have oil get all over my bilge here. So I'm gonna get this wrench, get it down in there, and see if we can get this thing off. Yep, a little turn there, that might be enough. Yep, there we go. There's our oil filter. And if you ever change oil before, you know it's always a good idea to just put a light coating of oil on the rubber gasket for the new filter before you install it. And with the new oil filter, you just need to hand tighten it. You want to make it nice and tight, but hand tightening should be enough. You don't need to use a wrench to tighten it back up again. tight down in here, but nice and tight. Okie dokie. And of course you want to make sure that whatever the owner's manual says, that's the kind of oil that you want to put in there. You want to put a really good quality oil. These are high revving engines. You don't want to put cheap oil in. So check your manual, make sure you're putting in the right stuff. Now we took about 4 quarts out. So I'm going to put about 4 quarts back in, maybe a little tiny bit less. Then we'll check the level. Let's see, we are a little bit more. Right there for just a minute. Okay, I can take a little bit more. Let's see where we are now. And of course, when you're checking the level, you do want to make sure that the ski is on nice flat level ground so that you're actually getting an accurate read on your dipstick here. One more time. All right, now that is right at halfway between the 2 marks. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. Now, one thing that you should always do, whether it's a jet ski, car, boat, whatever, once you put that oil back in, you want to start it back up, let that oil circulate, let it settle back down, and then check it one more time to make sure it is at the right level. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're not going to run it for a really long time this time, so I don't need to turn the water on. I'm just going to crank it for 10 seconds or so, and then turn it back off, because that's all we'll need. Now that we've let that oil kind of circulate, fill that filter up and everything, we're going to let it settle again for just a couple of minutes. We'll check it one more time, top it off if necessary, and then we're done. All right, one last thing. First of all, I did top it off just a little bit after running the engine for a bit. Check the engine level, the oil level again, topped it off, we're good to go. But one last thing, since you're in here, why don't you check around just to make sure everything looks okay. You can check your hose connections, check any other types of connections, just to make sure everything looks good. Most of the time, of course, it will be. But if you happen to have a little issue, maybe a hose is coming loose or something, this is a good time for you to check it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So, you know, like connections like this, checking to make sure they're good. Here you've got other connections over here. Just grab them, shake them a little bit, make sure everything is nice and tight, electrical connections, make sure anything doesn't look wrong, so to speak. The more often you do this, the more often you're in here messing around, you kind of get the idea as to what things look like. One day you might look in here and find out something looks a little different. In that case, you investigate, maybe you've just solved yourself a big hassle. So spend a couple of minutes doing that. Once you're all done, you put the seats back on and you're good to go. So, what do y'all think? Not really that bad, was it? So, and that saved me over 200 bucks. Again, you know, oil and a filter, not that much, about 30 bucks, 35 bucks. And I didn't have to pay a dealer over $200 to do that for me. So, not really that difficult. Again, I'll put a link in the description down below where you can get one of those oil extractors. You can use it for your boat, you can use it for your jet ski. I know some people that use them for cars too. So, there you have it. Let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. Do you do it yourself? Have you done it yourself before? Do you prefer to have somebody else do it? What else would you like to see me talk about? Anything like that. Again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And we'll see you next time.